BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Wake Up to Money from BBC 5 Live.
Hello, welcome to your Wake Up to Money podcast. How do you find entrepreneurial inspiration amidst the gloom as warnings hospitality earnings could halve?
You know, I'm really concerned about what happens at the end of October. There's got to be some successor to that scheme.
After those updates that we had from the scientists, the new rules starting to kick in, pubs in England to close at 10 o'clock from later in the week. What support will be put in place for businesses and for workers? Stock markets took a tumble as well, down nearly 3.5% in London. That's 52 billion quid disappearing off the value of our biggest companies. And we're going to have a look at what the Chancellor should be doing next. Once again in our series today, it's the turn of the aerospace industry and where do you get investment from?
Wake Up to Money with Sean Farrington.
So here we are. Very good morning to you. And we're waking up, waiting for the Prime Minister to address the nation later today to give us more detail on where we go next. Official, the UK is moving up from alert level 3 to 4 when it comes to coronavirus. That means transmission is high or rising exponentially. We heard from the scientists about some of those big numbers, some of the growing numbers, whether it's to do with cases, hospital admissions, that they not necessarily are predicting over the next few weeks, but say could materialise if we carry on at the rate we are right now, which means the front pages of the papers, a lot of people who have plans, social plans over the next few weeks or so, all affected by this new 10 p.m. curfew for pubs and restaurants, the front of the Times. Bad news at 10, front of the Sun. Johnson cracks down on pubs in push to contain spread of COVID. The pub industry, restaurant industry, the hospitality industry hit hard. We've got Kate McCarthy with me over the show this morning, who runs McCarthy Recruitment across the UK, London, Bristol, Manchester. Morning to you, Kate.
Morning, Sean.
Kate, I remember when we first started chatting to you on Wake Up to Money, but however many months, years ago it was, hospitality was your key thing. You know, we'd talk to you about what was going on in that industry. I mean, has your business taken the jolt that I imagine it has done from everything that's going on here? Hospitality is at the forefront, it seems, today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we built our business on retail and hospitality. That's my whole team's background. I think, Sean, probably a couple of years ago, we started to look at other areas. So we do recruit within other sectors now, which has really helped us. But yeah, I mean, even still, it's taken a hit because we've got a lot of long-standing customers we've worked with for a long time. We're passionate about that sector. I was only in the hospitality business on Friday talking to a senior operator, and even my passion for the business comes through. I just love hospitality, the service, the customer, the buzz, the pace of it, and it's heartbreaking, really.
Does it feel like almost, over the weekend, starting this week, that we have taken a turn? I mean, I think it was Chris Whitty using the phrase, we've turned a corner and not in a good way. Does it feel to you like conversations are changing again, mood in the industry is changing again, or is it we're cracking on?
I think there's a lot of upset, actually, and a lot of frustration. And this was a concern. So I think, I was talking to you only a few weeks ago and talking about if a second lockdown happens, there's a lack of confidence. And I think, Eat Out to Help Out was a really great initiative that almost you could feel a buzz coming back and people going out socialising and people thinking, finally, we're opening our doors, we're coming back. And then it was almost literally the day that finished, I think they announced the rule of 6, and you could just feel a flattening of everybody because that immediately dented confidence, and that immediately, actually footfall went down, and not necessarily just because, it got more expensive because the scheme wasn't there, because people continued doing their own thing. It really was confidence. And I just think, listening to the scientist, Chris Whitty, etc. yesterday, they were very scary in their approach. There's talk of 50,000. It was quite intimidating, all the predictions. And I think notwithstanding rules and regulations that the Prime Minister's talked about putting in today, there's an overall lack of confidence about them people going out, and we'd only just started to kind of get that back.
That number of 50,000 you mentioned, that's the number of new daily cases
Yeah,
that we could be at by sort of mid-October if those daily cases
there's
carry
a
on
big if there,
rising.
Sean, in my opinion. It just kind of, I think it's really important that you balance tightening things. You don't want to spread this deadly virus. It is very concerning, but it did feel, for me, and I'm quite opinionated, Sean. I thought it was quite scaremongery last night. If you listen to that, and it did feel like if this happens, this could happen if, and there just feels like lots of ifs. Still
Well,
feels like there's no certainty.
one area that seems to have held up in recent weeks and not maybe followed all the data of how economies have been doing over the last few months and how tough the next few months might be has been the stock market. So we've got Louise Dudley with me over the course of the show as well, portfolio manager of global equities at Federated Hermes. Hi, Louise.
Good morning.
Did it feel like something changed from amongst investors yesterday? When I have a look, the FTSE 100 down nearly 3.4%, so now at 5,800 for people who sort of keep an eye on those numbers. If you want to know what that means in terms of the value of the companies and how much they fell by on the FTSE 100, that was £52 billion. You see it often said wiped off the value of the FTSE 100 in one day. We wake up this morning, we see in Hong Kong stock markets down a couple of percent there. Was there a change?
I think one of the things that people are talking about is there's a lack of kind of positive catalysts out there. And I think right now, while we're kind of waiting for the next round of earnings and people are starting to get worried, as the presenter mentioned, about consumer confidence and that those earnings aren't going to come through. And obviously you went through in the second quarter, everything was very bad, very weak. But the expectations were that things would start to come back, and certainly looking towards the end of the year, a little bit more optimistic. And I think obviously that hasn't happened. And particularly yesterday, without any kind of positive news to buoy the market with all this negative sentiment, there was quite an excessive sell-off across the market.
I mean, when you look at, it's the typical industries that were hit yesterday: hospitality, travel, hotel companies, who were suffering a lot of that fall in share price. The worst hit was the British Airways owner, IAG, down 12%. I mean, what was really different for British Airways and IAG yesterday compared to, say, Friday?
So I think, a lot of the things that kind of keep companies looking a little bit more solid is if they have ongoing cash flow coming through. And obviously with the ongoing restrictions, they're continuing to burn cash without any money coming in at that top line. And so that's really what it's about. If the company cannot maintain that cash flow, then obviously people start to worry about ongoing uncertainty and whether kind of bankruptcy is an option or whether they'll have to go to the market to raise more capital, which would be a particularly negative sign for a lot of these companies.
So do you particularly see anything in the coming weeks that could provide that positivity and the boost for investors? We know that the stock markets like it when central banks come out and say we're going to pump more money into the system, or we're going to try and cut the interest rates as low as we can possibly go. But is there anything really that you think would give all these businesses a boost all at the same time?
Yeah, so definitely, we'll wait and see kind of what gets said today, but an extension on some of the measures that have already been put in place. So particularly, say, within the real estate sector, some of the measures that protect some of the retailers, that give them a little bit more time in terms of paying their rent, or if there's small business loans that continue to kind of either have increased money or increase the scope of those. All of that acts as support to the underlying strength of the economy, and so that would be seen as positive. Also, there's kind of positive vaccine information. That's the other thing that investors obviously look at and say, well, that's obviously a positive for getting things going again.
Yeah, so we've got those changes at the pubs. Going up to the bar will be illegal. New laws will say it has to be table service only. We've got the Prime Minister chairing this Cobra Emergency Committee later today, expected to make a statement in the Commons after, expected to have a press conference later on as well. So we had that warning yesterday from his top two scientists that unless we take urgent action, the UK's infection rate could surge to 50,000 new coronavirus cases a day by the middle of next month. And that's what they were talking about, a chart that, you know, makes a lot of the papers today, being shared a lot on social media. Of, you know, there's a lot of ifs in there, but it's if the coronavirus infection doubled every 7 days, then you go from, you know, what would be in the small 1,000s at the moment to 50,000 a day by mid-October, which is why we've heard of these new contingency measures coming in, these steps towards that lockdown that we had earlier in the year. Will we get to the full lockdown? It's a big question on a lot of people's minds. We've got a few people in the hospitality industry to chat about all of this. We've got Ollie Volkard, who is the managing director of the Volkard Group, and that has 15 bars, cafes, nightclubs in the northeast where tighter restrictions are already in place. Morning to you, Ollie.
Good morning.
And David Hurst as well, who's the founder of Leeds-based Cocktail Maker, which supplies drinks, bars and staffs to corporate events and weddings. So the business is called Cocktail Maker. Hi, David.
Morning, Sean. Hi.
Morning. Ollie, if the pictures were anything to believe, the only people in the country who seem to have a good night out is those in the northeast. From if I was looking at the front page of the paper over the weekend, I know that, you know, it's obviously not the case. But what has it been like? You've had a few of these tighter restrictions already in place. What's it been like for you lately?
It's been a roller coaster the last 6 months. It's been very, very challenging. And each week and each day, sometimes it feels like there's another set of challenges thrown at us. And people talk about the late night economy. They talk about nightclubs and bars and think 10 o'clock is a key to all this. But really, hospitality is everything from 6 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the morning. And hospitality is about people. And the real challenge here is keeping people, whether they're our customers or our staff, very importantly, keeping them on an even keel and keeping them feeling confident in their own lives and their jobs and their careers going forward.
So has there been a big change for you over the last week?
Yes, it has. We have 15 venues and we only had 6 of them open coming into this. We'd only managed to get 6 reopened. We hadn't reopened the nightclubs. We hadn't reopened the late night venues because of social distancing challenges and amplified music and dance floors and what have you. So those venues hadn't reopened. The ones that had reopened were probably trading around about 60% of normal levels. And over the weekend, that dropped by a further 50%. So in effect, we were trading this weekend at about 30% of expected revenues.
And remind us, I mean, there's a lot of new rules in a lot of very different areas right around the country. What were the changes that affected you over the weekend?
We had the introduction of a 10 p.m. curfew. We had table service, and we had a bit of a confusion over households not mixing. Our local policy was households can't mix within households. Then I think the local council confused it and got people questioning whether they could do it in licensed premises or not. So I think that scared people off. The 10 p.m. curfew, the real challenge with that is you have to shut it, obviously 10 p.m. Doors have to be closed. Now, if you're serving food, you basically get one sitting at this. You can sit people between 7 and 7:30, and when they're gone, and you can't get that 9 o'clock sitting or that later sitting. So 10 o'clock doesn't sound dreadful, but it does half your revenue.
That is that why, Ollie, when I see that Kate Nichols, who's the chief executive of UK Hospitality, the trade body across the UK, she's warning that revenues could halve a lot of venues. Is that why just, you know, the difference of an hour or so can mean that bigger difference on your takings?
Yeah, we are very symbiotic, and we need all of the elements of the business. And so people have this vision of, well, it's just a few blokes standing at a bar at 10:30. What does it matter? But of course, people having a meal may want a cocktail afterwards. People may want to go to the cinema and have a drink afterwards, or go to the theatre, and all of these elements are all taken away, and we all rely on one another and all benefit from one another. And as these individual strands of the makeup of it all are taken away, that just further limits your revenue streams and further increases the challenges.
David, you're a supplier to these corporate events and weddings, which, we know have been hit hard over recent months. But is this another level for you now of these rules coming in? Will that actually change the conversations you're having with the people you're supplying?
It's not so much about the numbers, it's about the consumer confidence, because apart from the mixed messages, the mixed messages mean that the public aren't sure what they're able to do, what they can and can't do. So the easiest thing is not to do anything, and to cancel their son's 21st, their golden wedding anniversary, cancel the launch of the new building that probably has no staff to go in it anyway. But that's the easiest thing for the public to do, is to say, we're not having this, we're not doing this, it's all on hold, which completely which has sounded the death knell for ourselves and any potential pickup.
Have you seen examples of it working?
Of
say, a hosting of a corporate event, for example? Has it been able to be done within the rules? Are there businesses, people out there who are up for going to these things and carrying them out safely?
The only thing we've seen on the side of on the corporate side is one of the companies that we work with and we supply staff to. They were asked to supply alcohol-free cocktails to one of the big delivery companies who obviously have a lot of staff in their building. As a little thank you to them, a little treat, break time treat. Apart from that, there's been no sign at all of any corporate. There's not been a sniff of any corporate inquiries.
Were you hoping for a bounce back over the winter?
It looked like people were starting to get used to events having to be smaller, as in 10, 15, 20, 25, up to 30 people. That was, as a business, that was very, very difficult to manage after we'd had numbers of in the hundreds and low thousands, but it was workable. But then the 6 people rule and 2 households rule completely kiboshed everything.
So where does that put your business now? I'm sort of reading here that is you and your wife that run the business, and you can end up getting in up to 50 people depending on the job. I mean, what's the state of play for? Let's start with you and your wife, your household right now. What's your income?
So we've got family. We've got financial help from family. 2 of mine and one of Catherine's family, basically sustaining us for the time being.
How long can that go on for?
Well, just like the situation we're looking upon this as a week to week. There's no other way to go about it. We want to keep the business afloat as much as it's still packed up and ready to go. But that's something that we'd like a little bit more clarity on what on the furlough side, what working and not working means. It's very difficult for us in the events industry to hit the ground running and we can't just open our doors like bars and restaurants and pubs and clubs and people will come in. This is events where people planning a corporate function, people planning a wedding and a big party for 250 people, they need some notice. They need to give us some notice, and they need some notice to plan it. So what we need is a little bit more targeted support rather than the one-size-fits-all broad brushstrokes.
Let's have a bit of a listen to the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, who they were talking about lots of things yesterday, but one key thing that many people might be holding on to is how long this might go on for, this stage of things.
We should see this as a 6-month problem that we have to deal with collectively. It's not indefinite. Science will in due course ride to our rescue, but in this period of the next 6 months, I think we have to realise that we have to take this collectively very seriously.
So Kate McCarthy's with us, who runs a recruitment company. Kate, there you go. You've got a date there, 6 months. That's how long the battle is for this phase of what we're going through. I mean, you hear that? What does that mean for you?
I think that just means another bolt down and see how we can survive. I mean, it's interesting listening to David and Ollie there. I've been talking about businesses being in survival mode, and you kind of doing everything you can to cut costs and really kind of make sure you're here at the end of it. Look, I never thought it was going to be ended now. I'm probably more positive about how it would affect hospitality, and I felt like we started to get some momentum. But when this all started, I said, look, this looks like it's a minimum of a year for us. It's probably longer than that because actually recruitment takes a while to recover. Once the actual sectors recover, it takes a while before they have a need. So, that's 18 months. That's longer than 6 months for me, Sean. Just to me, when you look at that, for me, it just feels really, we're coming up to the golden quarter for retail as well. We're coming up for hospitality, Christmas dues, people going out, and that's an absolutely critical time for people to make money and for things to happen. And I think ultimately there's got to be some other help there. Yes, the furlough scheme ends at the end of October, but we can't have local lockdowns like we have, where you've got a place like Bolton where hospitality is actually being told to shut, never mind table service. And you can't have what they're saying here with no help at all from I'm really concerned about what happens at the end of October. There's got to be some successor to that scheme. And I agree. I look at the kind of help that's given. There's been the odd grant, which is impossible to get, and you can't get through the paperwork, and then they're all gone because there's so much of a need. It really feels like a bit chaotic. And I do hope there's some sort of announcement today. You can't say it's going to go on 6 months, Sean, and then not say how you're going to help businesses, because I have a real concern over how many survive.
I mean, David, that survival of your business, do you think you can be able to sort of keep your head down for 6 months, keep things tight and affordable, sustainable in that period of time, and be ready to go in 6 months' time, having those conversations, not necessarily having an event, full-blown event in 6 months' time, but being able to, as confidence picks up in the new year, be ready to go. Can you do that?
I never say never. I've run this. Sorry, by the way, can I just correct it? Cocktail Makers based in Buckinghamshire and London. We have an office in Leeds, but
that'll do for us.
However, it's okay. We can make this work. We can make this work with 6 people. We work with a couple of great chefs. We can offer the whole food and drink package to 6 people, 6 or 8 people. But I've got other irons in the fire. I'm looking at there's a gin company that I work with in Chamonix. I'm putting things together for quite different experiences, just going a little bit left field, just something else to be able to bring some funds in to the family, basically to the not necessarily to this business as it exists per se, but just to bring in some funds.
Where do you get the energy from, David, to sort of reinvent and be so creative with your business and think, we're going to do something new and offer people something different in the middle of what must be one of the toughest times you've been through with your business?
Oh, it's undoubtedly it makes 2008-9 look like a small bump in the road. So I'm just always talking to people. On social media, literally having conversations with meeting up with colleagues, with staff, and just having conversations, and suddenly a little light bulb goes off and you think, okay, well, this might work, and you've nothing to lose because of the position you're in. So you look at something else you can do, suddenly a plan's formulated, you start reading back through some of your industry, again, social media and magazines, etc., and before you know it, you've developed an idea, and it might be a business. So
incredible.
Run with it, see where it goes.
Ollie, who's the boss of Volcod Group, 15 bars, cafes, nightclubs. Ollie, are you able to find inspiration from places? Are you still thinking as a boss, this is the new thing we're going to get going next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think entrepreneurs think like that. At the moment, the word used earlier was survival mode, and that is really all we're in. My company's 25 years old this year, and the only reason we've sustained ourselves from March to now is we're eating into our balance sheet. You know, we are eating our excess and what we've built up over my lifetime's work. That is only sustainable for so long. And as David says, it's about, you know, I'm looking at my family, I'm looking at my children and my wife and my responsibilities as a father and also as an employer. And we do need something from the government. I'm very conscious as an industry, we've been given a lot and we've asked for a lot. And I don't want to just constantly be the guys whinging, but people need to look at high streets and think, are they happy to lose the theatre, the cinema, the restaurants, the cafes, the bars? Are they happy to lose all of those and hope that they can be reinvented and rebuilt late in 2021? Because we will lose an enormous skill set and an asset base of people and talent who make up these venues. These aren't just buildings. These buildings without people in them are just shells. You know, those people, those chefs and bartenders and waiting staff, they are talented people, and we need to find a way to help them have the confidence to get through this. We can all spend a bit less. We can all cut our cloth accordingly, but we need light at the end of the tunnel. We need to be able to see there is a future to this. I mean, we talk about corporate sales at this time of year. I would be about 80% fully sold in December. I haven't got a booking in December, you know, and that's an enormous ground change. And we're not going to get bookings in December. We have to now accept that. So as much as the Chancellor has already given a lot, we have to find a way, even if those ways are ways of giving us hope for the future and saying, look, you're not going to pay rates for 2 years, or you're not going to have, you know, we're going to reduce your VAT for 2 years. So maybe they're not giving money. They are giving money up front now, but they're also giving us the ability to repay that money and trade our way out of it. So we can look and say, there is a future here. It is worth sticking in. It is worth taking these tough calls because there's a way out of it at the end.
Wake Up to Money from BBC 5 Live.
I've already heard some pretty inspiring chat from a couple of businesses running bars, pubs, restaurants, supplying drinks to corporate events and weddings, and how somehow they're still able to think and look ahead and reinvent their business and plan to offer their customers new things when they can finally, at some point in the future, get up and running at full pelt the way they were used to before lockdown. All of this coming after the latest headlines, coronavirus-wise, pubs, bars, restaurants, other hospitality venues in England have to close by 10 o'clock. That will be from this Thursday to all help curb the spread of coronavirus is the logic behind it. According to reports as well, Boris Johnson, when he speaks a bit later today, is going to be urging people to work from home where it does not negatively impact businesses. I've got Kate McCarthy with me, who runs McCarthy Recruitment across the UK. Kate, that working from home thing then, right, so we're back to urging people to work from home where possible, according to reports. Is that changing things with businesses you speak to?
And to be fair, Sean, that's the first that I've heard that it's possibly happening. And my initial reaction was, great, again, you know, it's just chaotic. So a week ago, they were trying to get everyone back in order to generate the economy on high street. So people working from home, again, takes the spending away from hospitality and retail. But also, from my point of view, I believe that our team together can navigate this really difficult time. And actually, you know, I think it was Ollie that just said before, you know, 08, 09 was a small bump. And that's kind of how we feel as well. We're really trying to pivot our business, do different things, be entrepreneurial and trade our way out of this. Doing that working from home is really difficult. And actually, he's then asking us business owners to understand what he means by if it doesn't affect it negatively. It's so, you know, what does that mean, Sean? You know, for me, it does affect it negatively. We don't trade as well when we're all separate and we're all at home. as we do when we're all together. But then that's a huge responsibility to make that decision. And I just, that worries me because, again, it's a really confused, mixed message.
Have you had a moment, Kate? I was just whether I'm clutching at straws here, but I was amazed at hearing Ollie and David talk about whether it's David's plans for a new gym product that he's going to get going next year, and he's working on that right in the middle of having seen his income completely fallen off a cliff. I mean, for you, have you had moments, just literally for yourself running your business personally, moments of positivity of where something that you hadn't tried before, you've tried in recent weeks and it's worked, and you've gone, oh, blimey, that could be something new?
You've got to, Sean. That is all you can do. So, we've been doing that, and actually have got some great suppliers that I do a lot of consultation work with lots of other sectors, and they've kind of said, Kate, why don't you just recruit for us? You can recruit a finance manager in retail or hospitality. Why can't you do that in agriculture? Actually, yes, I can. And actually, that's come from people saying, we want to support you because we want you to be here as a business because you do a great job. So that has got me thinking. And the only way to get out of this, I was smiling when Ollie and David were speaking, because that is what entrepreneurs do. You fight. We wouldn't have started if we didn't fight in the first place. I said last week, we're a startup again. This feels like starting from scratch, and exactly what David said, but he's worked for 25 years and built a business, and he's built a decent balance sheet that he, perhaps wanted to retire at some point or pass that on or whatever he wanted to do. And that's gone. And there's lots of business owners that I'm talking to that their plans personally have changed. And, look, whether you're employed and you've lost your job, or whether you're a business owner that's not got an income and you're trying to save it, the only way out is to be positive. No, don't get me wrong, there's moments, Sean, where I kind of think, can I do this? There's been some really dark moments over the last 6 months where I've kind of really had to pull myself up. And actually, my husband's got his own business as well. And I think between the two of us, if one's down, the other one's up, and we pull each other up. And as does my team. I've got an amazing team. But my role is to lead a team out of this. My role is to be positive. My role is to say, right, we can do this. And I won't come up with all the ideas myself. I was sat yesterday with two people that I've recruited for and I've worked with closely, and they said, well, how can we help you? So there's some amazing people out there as well that we all just want to help each other.
I like the idea, Kate, as well, going into the agriculture industry for the first time. That all, after that conversation where that worked, you were just straight online, getting your Barber jacket ordered, the wellies. Heading
Absolutely
to get new business in a new sector. I mean, that's what you've got to do. We're going to have a look at aerospace now. We've been hearing a bit over the course of this show. We're looking over the whole week at what Rishi Sunak can do next. That is clearly the thing that so many businesses are looking for from the government. The furlough scheme comes to an end. We've heard that various loan schemes are going to be extended. Applications can be taken until the end of November now, whether it's the big CBILS loan that you may have thought about applying for, or a bounce back loan. But what next? Furlough comes to an end as well. Well, I've got Paul Everett with me, who's the chief executive of ADS, and ADS represents and supports over 1,000 UK businesses that operate in aerospace, defence, security, space sectors. Morning to you, Paul.
Good morning.
What's the number one thing for you then?
Well, I wish it was just one thing, Sean, that would make life a lot easier. The reality is, obviously, our sector has been badly hit by the pandemic. Like many, demand collapsed at the beginning of, end of March, beginning of April. And to be honest, there's not really been a strong recovery since, not helped by the sort of on-off travel corridors and persistent quarantine regime that we've seen. So demand is our key challenge. In terms of our aim is to try and safeguard the jobs in the aerospace sector, high value, long-term jobs. I think we are very confident that as we overcome the pandemic, global growth of international travel will return. And we want to ensure that we've got a strong and viable UK supply chain to take advantage of that, and also to be part of the transformation to net zero aviation in the future.
Well, I'm
So
going
for
to
us-
ask you about net zero a little later, because there's obviously some interesting announcements from Airbus today on that. But we'll get onto that in a bit. I just wonder then. So if it's more about demand for you than necessarily, staff in your industry right now having their wages paid for by a government and through a furlough scheme, as we've heard a lot of bosses sort of call for, what needs to be put in place if Rishi Sunak is stepping up in the next, well, he may well be doing it in the next few days, but in the next few weeks or months with the budget and making some big announcements? What do you need to see as a creative policy announcement from him?
So we absolutely do need to see some further support, targeted support for particular sectors to ensure that we don't lose more jobs. In our sector, we've got about 30,000 people currently at risk. And losing all of those people would be a very bad thing. Also, we've got a lot of young people who should be coming into our businesses or have just started in our businesses. So some kind of additional flexibility around the apprenticeship levy so that we can use some of the resources to keep those in work and also keep the flow of young people coming into our industry would be very important. But the key measures for us are firstly a long-term investment fund. So we don't need more debt in our businesses. We need additional measures so that we can see capital injection into companies so that they can both survive but also thrive by investing for the future. We do need to see a very, very significant uptick in the amount of monies available or support available for research and development, because the net zero transformation is happening and the UK should be leading that work. And then finally, we need to look at bringing forward some of the projects and programs that we would normally be doing in the defence and space sector to create additional demand for the sort of high value manufacturing supply chains that are currently hit because aerospace is not busy.
Are you worried when you look at businesses in your industry that maybe they have taken on too much debt over recent months, with one of the major government support schemes has been the emergency loans from large to small businesses being able to take those on, and we've heard this week that they will be extended, the applications there, to the end of November. Is that a good scheme to have at the forefront of your support for businesses?
So I think it's clearly been very, very helpful for businesses to be able to get those loans. But you can't. So firstly, there are companies who haven't been able to access those because those loans were only available for those who the banks would have loaned to anyway. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you already had significant debt in your business and you'd seen some challenging times because of a reduced demand, it was quite difficult to secure those loans. But also, that if you've just got to keep paying the loan, then you aren't able to invest in the business in the way that you need to. So that's why we need what we would term a patient capital fund, which is able to invest in businesses to enable them to build for the longer term. So they're not having to struggle day to day to try and pay back additional loans, but they have capital to invest in their businesses so that over the next 5 to 10 years, they can both ride out the difficulties of the next few months, but also take advantage of the growth in the sector as it returns.
I'm going to bring in our investor on the show today, Louise Dudley, who's a portfolio manager of global equities, investing in businesses all around the world at Federated Hermes. Hi again, Louise.
Hello.
Just listening to what Paul's saying there. If you're a business listening to this and thinking, yeah, I want to raise some money from somewhere. I think I'm going to be all right in 6 months' time, but I need to keep afloat. I've got these ideas. I want to get money in. Where do you go right now? Who is investing in businesses?
So I think a lot of the retail banks have been given, excess cash from the government to support small businesses, and certainly where there's innovation, you mentioned about net zero. That's a huge trend in terms of looking at green infrastructure, green innovation, green technologies. So that's an area that's being supported by dedicated loans. But I would say that's probably the first port of call. Up the scale within the kind of the large cap equity space, we are seeing a lot more activity than we were a number of months ago, whether that's through M&A or through IPOs. So there is capital there, and certainly with yields quite low, investors are looking for opportunities to put their money to work.
So when you say M&A, that's companies merging, people buying other companies, and IPOs are people going onto stock markets looking for investments, people to be able to buy shares in their companies. It can be ordinary investors to bigger investors as well. So different ways of raising money there. And again, you mentioned that sort of the idea of being carbon efficient, Paul, of having a net zero carbon output is something that a lot of businesses are aiming for. Can I ask you about Airbus? So while I dig it out somewhere, so it's Airbus is huge aerospace employer, manufacturer, unveiling these plans for what it's hailed as the first commercial zero emission aircraft. Is this becoming a reality for the industry now, that there can be planes in service within the next 15 years that will have no carbon emissions?
That's the goal, absolutely. And I think we're an industry that has been consistently investing in reducing the environmental impact of what we do, but the intensity of that has grown significantly over the course of the last probably 5 to 6 years. And what we're seeing from Airbus, I think, is them wanting to demonstrate their ambition.
Wake Up to Money from BBC 5 Live. That's it from Wake Up to Money. You can download the podcast every Monday to Friday, so please make sure you subscribe. We'd also love it if you left us a review when you do. Get in touch, keep the conversation going anytime as well on social media. Use the hashtag Wake Up to Money.